What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am joined today by these lovely people, legendary author Janny Wurts and legendary friend and booktuber and composer Nikhil from Esteem. Thank you both so much for hanging out with me today. I'm really excited for this discussion. How are we doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having us, Jake and Jenny. Thanks for introducing us to this incredible book. So excited to jump into
for
this.
giving it a try.
So good.
So good.
We all got our omnibus editions.
We got them. The Heaven Tree by Edith Pargeter. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Nikhil and I were talking about we should buddy read something, right? And we were throwing out some ideas, and Janny's like, hey, this book is incredible, and people aren't talking about it. Maybe it's worth a shot, right? And we talked about, like, let's do it. Janny jumped in. Here we are. So the three of us now read this. Janny, this is your third time through, right?
Third time through.
Just
as good as the first time.
And
if people are not familiar with this name, she was also Ellis Peters that did the Brother Cadfael series, which became a TV series. I actually prefer this book.
Okay.
And she considers this the pinnacle of her career.
Yes, I will. I can kind of tell because this was fantastic. And Janny, I told you this. Nikhil, I told you. I said this on my channel. Like, coming in, I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it that much because this was my first historical fiction. I was like, I really like my dragons and my spaceships and my wizards, and I like that stuff, and I'm scared to not have it. But I could not put this down, and I'm so glad that we jumped in. And so I'm so excited to talk about this. I think maybe let's keep it spoiler free for a minute here so people can kind of watch, and we'll jump into spoilers at some point. We'll give a warning and whatnot. But I think maybe an interesting place to start. I'm thinking about this a lot with books lately. Is like what were we coming into this with? Our expectations, or what did we have in mind? And I guess I just sort of said already. For me, I was like sort of at arm's length. I wasn't sure what I would like. I trust Janny's judgment. I think you've earned the right to know what a good story is. But I was like, I don't know. Is it going to hold my attention? We'll see. So I kind of came in like that. Nikhil, what were you coming into the story with?
Yeah, honestly, it was kind of equal parts excitement and like cautiously optimistic, I guess you could say. Because, on the one hand, I'd heard so much about Pillars of the Earth, and I haven't read it yet. So I'm, and that's always the comparison. And I think, Janny, you had also mentioned, that this is like a different take on maybe some of the idea of like building a church in the 1200s, but it's from an artist's perspective, and that immediately made me think like, oh, this might be right up my alley, because I'm always into the creative process behind the art, and like looking at art from an artist's perspective, I think is something that's not usually explored in historical fiction, let alone in this time period. So that was also something I was very excited about. But also it's like, oh, I wonder if once I read Pillars, how I'm gonna feel about it. Or I'd been hearing about Pillars so much that it was like kind of whispering in my ear as I was gonna sit down to read this. And I was completely I was completely mistaken in having any sort of reservations about it, because it's fantastic. I mean, really kind of the characterization and the view on art is like, we'll probably jump into it more.
We'll get into it.
We're not going to talk about spoilers. I mean, what is often missed in this period is the genuinely difficult time people in the lower classes had. Their lives were very, very proscribed, and they lived in very, very difficult conditions, and subsistence living, where the nobles were off having wars and pulling all their money away, meant that one bad year, so where do they get their hope? Mm-hmm. What made them reach, and the very rich spirituality of the period, the very rich religiosity of the period, where did they get their inspiration to live through this? And you see it in the art. You see it in the churches built. You see it in the cathedrals. You see it in what did they reach for to uplift their lives. And this book captured that in an incredibly beautiful way. It depicted the complexity of the culture of the 1200s and emphasized points that many male writers miss. It was not all brute and nasty and short. Mm-hmm. There were other things that were valued at that time that come through in the culture. And I often feel we identify more with Rome and we identify with Renaissance forward, we miss the significance of the depth of culture because we look down on the Dark Ages as an ignorant time, and it was not. Some of the architectural and the stone building, the influence from Islamic cultures that went into some of the cathedral building and the architecture, it was a very rich period. And I feel like Edith Pargeter's book captures that, and Pillars of the Earth walks away from it. It's like stacking Game of Thrones against Guy Gavriel Kay. Guy Kay sees the poetry in the artwork. He sees the full culture in the round, whereas Martin zeroed in on the ugly brute and the short.
Interesting. And what's funny, like there's some battle that's happening in here, right? But it is so not the focus. It's almost completely glossed over in a lot of instances that like it's happening and it matters, but like our main character is even taking part at times and we're not focused on it. And I really appreciated that. And like, that doesn't take any of the tension or the stakes away though.
It's like living through an era where I was starting the War of Light and Shadows and designing it when Vietnam was still going on. Was how much of that war it affected me. It was around me. It affected the people that I knew. I met people that got PTSD that were my own generation. But how much did that affect my daily life? Beyond the protests so I think that she has put this period into much better focus and much better perspective, and the actual building of the cathedral, she goes into more of the parts of it. It's not just what you can pull out of a church brochure when you visit one. The other thing that I thought was tremendous was people often overlook how there was cross-cultural influence in the noble classes and in the artisans between England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Paris. And she shows the student movement and the apprentices in Paris. Yeah. So there was much more cross-cultural pollination going on here. She shows that breadth of scope. She brings characters that have been to the Crusades and come back from them. So you're getting the perspective in the wider mosaic of what's happening in the world, but she zeroes in on the characters and their lives and what's important to them and what their ethics are and what their convictions are. Yeah. And it's very, very beautifully stitched together.
Beautifully. Yeah. Let's get into the characters a little bit here. Nikhil, let me pass this to you. Like, what stood out to you, or maybe what's one or two things, just so we don't go for hours and hours, because I'm sure we could. What were maybe a couple of the biggest like character aspects of how she handled the characters in here that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I guess just to keep it as vague and spoiler free as possible, I think the first thing that really struck me is that Janny's promise of how it looks at art from an artist's perspective was immediately evident, even in Harry's POV, who's one of the main characters. You kind of see the seeds of his identity from the very beginning, and kind of
first paragraph was a description of a piece of artwork that he made, and it's just so exquisitely
floored me.
It captures all of the passion, all of the light, all of the beauty. It encapsulates everything of the great artist that he's going to become right on the first paragraph, and not even introducing a person.
Yeah.
It locks you right there.
It does.
Who made this piece of art?
Yes, and very quickly before Nikhil, you continue. When I read that first paragraph, I wasn't entirely sure if we're describing a piece of art or if this was a real angel, an actual God looking at it. Like, I couldn't quite tell because it was just written so beautifully. Yeah. And it blew me away. And I knew from that moment, I was like, I'm going to love this book.
It's kind of like the bridge to the profound, Like
it is because, the people of those times were not literate unless you were noble. And unless you were a lucky woman, you were not literate. So the stories, the inspiration, the religion, the uplift, the spiritual platform that you had to reach for was all done through the art. That's how they communicated.
Yeah.
Ballads, music, great artwork, stonework, cathedrals. That was their newspaper.
Yeah.
And she captured that.
Yes.
In this book. which I think Pillars of the Earth completely missed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be very interested to see that comparison when I.
It'll be fun to do a head and head.
Yeah, totally.
But I am not rereading that.
I'll have
to. You'll see why when you pick it up. It might be to your taste. I mean, I read it, but I said it could not hold a candle.
Yeah.
To the awareness of culture that came through in this.
Well, yeah, to that point, I think like when you look at Harry and you see that first almost divine writing in that paragraph, and you kind of see like, okay, you immediately see the deference and respect not only Edith gives the artistic process, but also the character gives the artistic process. And that immediately struck me, because not only is it that Harry views the art as sacred, but he views his kind of spiritual identity, his moral identity, in line with that artistic process. And it's like, the idea of finishing what you start, and like making that a big pillar in his mind for his as his artistic process, and also how much it echoes like the way he views life.
How much he gave up to pursue that career.
Yeah.
And the contrast between him and the bromance, his spiritual brother Adam.
Yeah.
And how they influenced each other, and the differences in their character, and set against who becomes the villain in this story, one of the most brilliantly written bad guys ever. And it's only going to get better from this.
And it was already great. It was already great. I think another thing I really appreciated about Harry was you could he thought a little bit differently, right? I don't think this is a spoiler to say, like the way that he sees the world is a little bit different from the people around him. He has more nuance and more subtlety, and he just because something has always been done a certain way, is just like, well, really, is that right?
But that would have been Adam and Adam's family influence. So he grew up with a foot in each world.
Yes, you're right.
And that is the heart of the conflict in this story.
Yeah, kicks everything off. Yeah. And like you said earlier, Janny, the characters are so, what's the word? They have such strong conviction and such strong values. And that's another big standout thing across all the characters, is immediately who they are and why they do things the way that they do things. And they're so consistent the whole way through. And I think I said this in a video, like the end of this book was the only possible ending in my mind. Like there was just nothing else that could have happened, because they all were going to do exactly what they were going to do. There's no way around it.
They kept their youthful convictions in rebellion, and the culture sooner or later caught up with them. And she stayed true to that too.
Yeah.
It's like dominoes falling, but I love the strength of the characters, where they're strong, where they step into pitfalls with their eyes open. And then she doesn't shy back from where it's going to take them. But you're still surprised in how she unfolds it.
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
I was still surprised. I didn't see it coming, but when it happened, I was like, there was nothing else that could have happened.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's like watching a play almost, and you see like you see something where it's like the stage is set, and it's like the characters are in their place, and it's like Act 3 begins. You almost feel that it's like just so well constructed that even with the surprises, you feel like this is just finely crafted. It couldn't have been any other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
All wrapped up in a beautiful prose style that you actually see the thing unreal. You get a real feel for the place, the characters, the events, the backdrop. The fact that the older generation that these kids are rebelling against to start with, they are rigid in their convictions, and they're not willing to see change. So it's also, a youth versus age kind of push-pull.
Absolutely.
And it also, to me, very clearly delineates that as an artist with a vision, you have to thread the needle, and you sometimes have to deal with people that are unsavory or ethical things that you don't like. Wherever the patronage comes from, you have to weigh, is it worth signing up for this? And if it means not creating your art versus playing with snakes, How do you tread that line?
Yeah.
And not compromise to the snakes? And I guess that kind of parallels my own journey in so many ways. I can really relate to Harry saying the artwork is going to outlast all of this. It's going to touch more people than all of this. And my personal struggle with the snakes I got to play with to get there will be irrelevant in the long haul. The art takes precedence.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask how, with both of you being like professional artists, right? Like how much you could relate to that part of the struggle. Nikhil, do you have anything to add? Do you have similar experiences with that sort of thing?
I think very much so. I think I think with the life of a life of a creative person is often a lot of work done in this, behind the scenes. And a lot of the things that people see is like one sliver of that. You see that common image of the iceberg, and it's like the top little tip is the success, and then everything else underneath is the rest of the
they don't see the snakes you had to play to get there. And I think that's one thing that coming to this story again with this perspective, when I read it first in my 20s, I did not see any of that coming. All the snakes were the good, everything was rosy. I was going to sign with publishers and it was all going to be great, straight to the top, like Robert Jordan or any of the others,
Sure.
So seeing it now, I'm going like, whoa, she really wrote a book that holds up over time. Because I don't know at what point she wrote this in her career. I'd be curious to look.
Yeah.
Did this precede or follow the Ellis Peter work? I don't know. I'd have to. That was one thing I was intending to do, was go look up and see where on the timeline this creation happened. But she really captured that perspective, and this is a book that does grow with time. You can read it again in another 2 decades, and it won't have lost a thing.
Yeah, it probably adds some, right? Because now you have a different perspective, different life experience.
Yeah, that feeling of you have what you want to accomplish artistically in the crosshairs, and you are not going to waver.
Yeah.
And you are not going to hear no, and you're just about everything in your life is going to come second.
Yeah.
Short of taking care of the people around you.
Yes.
And the big risk that Harry takes in this book, where he puts it all on the line. He has his perspectives in order. So I could relate to that, but I don't think it takes an artist to relate to this any more than reading a Guy Karaoke book. You need to be in touch with sentimental attachment or the way he writes emotionally about the process of looking back on a life. He writes very, very nuanced, very emotionally, more than most men do, but men seem to read his work and love it. So I feel like this book captured that flavor. If you like Guy Karaoke, you will probably love this book.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah, for sure.
It does feel that way, that like the older you get, the more nuance you get out of it. The more life experience you get, the more nuance you get out of it. And that probably transcends being an artist. An artist could relate to maybe some specific like idiosyncrasies related to the process or that sort of thing. But in terms of the idea of like Harry laying it all on the line, or like the nuanced takes of these relationships that Harry has with various people in the novel, I feel like that's something that anyone can relate to, coming from as they gain life experience and they become more in touch with themselves. And
how many times in fantasy have we read the dystopian future or the grimdark or the real, they got into the real grittiness of it, and there's no beauty, there's no poetry, there's no artwork, there's no jokes. There's no sports. There's no, the wonderful little scene in Paris where they're having fun as a young man and they're putting it off against their rivals. It's just a lovely, humorous, lighthearted moment, but the repercussions of that carry forward so powerfully because the connections those kids make with this very experienced courtesan. So, I miss that in so much fantasy, that roundedness, that full balance, that full spectrum of, you have really bleak, nasty stuff, but in the bleakest and nastiest of times, sometimes the most beautiful artwork gets created. And fantasy is so often looking through a keyhole and just doesn't want to acknowledge that there's a bigger world out there.
Yeah, totally. And then when you have the full spectrum like that, they amplify each other, right? The darkness makes the light seem even better, and vice versa. I think it's part of why Abercrombie's so popular.
The casual cruelty that some of the characters in this book portray versus the beauty that these characters are creating, but the casual cruelty that can happen in the culture. And that's the difference, I think, between Pillars of the Earth and this. The casual cruelty is centered in Follett's work.
I see. Yeah.
And to me, that was not the center of that culture, or nobody would have survived. You wouldn't have these great works of art if there wasn't a whole lot more going on.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. And like with obviously I've never been to medieval England, right? But it felt so authentic. It felt so real reading this book. It was just amazing how she brought it to life like that. And like, can I judge how accurate it is? Not really, but like, it really feels accurate to me.
It feels lived in.
It does. It does.
And cross-culturally lived in. They don't have just one culture interacting. They don't have just one, just the one Isambard, the amount of artwork he has in his collection. It comes from everywhere. It comes from all over the world, the expensive carpets. So it shows the cultural trading, the interaction that went on. It was not just we lived in daub and wattle huts or we lived in a drafty castle. Right. It wasn't that at all. It was much, much, much deeper and more closely tied to the natural seasons. And you feel that in this book too.
Yeah.
There were certain times they could not do their work because the weather wasn't right and things weren't covered. Sure. Or you didn't have enough light, or you didn't have enough. So they were much more tied to the natural world than we are today with our flick a switch and you get an electric light.
Yeah.
But so you feel that visceral connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm trying to think of some other non-spoilery things to bring up because there's a couple things I want to talk to you guys about, but they're very spoilery. Do you have one?
I just thought of something that is vague enough, but still is understandable. Is kind of the antagonist of the novel. Let's say one thing I loved about it was the way he's introduced. He's not really introduced as an antagonist per se. The first conversations that Harry has with this person, and but then he says a little nugget of something that like not everything about me is what it seems or something. Sure. He says something like that. And you kind of know, okay, there's more to this person. Yeah. And the slow unfolding of the knowledge that you gain in this character was like so much more realistic to what an antagonist should be, where it's like, this is not just a mustache twirling villain. It's like there's a depth to them. They have their own motivations. They won't align. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're, no one goes, I'm the evil person now. It's like you really feel that not only was their character explored realistically, but their first interaction with Harry, I thought was the
depiction of them, where you don't know them on the surface. You meet them as the rich patron.
Yeah.
The dream come true for Harry. But there's little things. But the thing is, you don't know when you meet a stranger.
Yeah.
You don't know what they keep hidden. You don't know how they interact. You have to. This is something we've lost, I feel, in modern world. It moves too fast. How many deep relationships do you have? How many close friends do you have? Unless you lived in a small town. Have you ever known people down to the bottom where you find a whole lot of things you don't like about them, even though you like them at first? Because what the mask they present to the world is somebody different underneath. These books unfold how you actually perceive people in another time period that was non-internet, where everything wasn't handed to you prepackaged. So I miss that. And I think she does an exemplary job. She doesn't signal you what to think. She shows you the unfolding, and your opinion of the people in these books evolves.
Yes. Yes. That was one of my favorite things about all the characters, really. But like, I didn't really like Harry. I felt like I knew pretty early on, right? Adam, I feel like I knew pretty early on, like what was most important. But some of the people, they get a little bit older. We're introduced to other characters, and it's like you get that surface level first impression through the point of view of Harry or whoever, and like you don't realize where it's going to go until it goes there later in the story. And that was just so fun to see it kind of unfold and have it like none of it was surprising really, because it made such perfect sense, and it was such perfectly laid out, like chapter by chapter, the progression of and these little reveals, and so none of it felt super shocking, but at the same time it sort of is, because it was, I would never have guessed that this is where we would end up. It's such an interesting, I don't know how to wrap my head around how that felt. Does that make any sense? I feel like I'm contradicting myself, but I don't know.
Also, what I liked about this book was it did not relegate the women to secondary influence.
Yeah, they're very important.
Women carried the keys to the castle. They did the day-to-day planning. They were very influential in ways that most male written in this time period ignore. Yeah. And the fact that she mixed the classes. You meet people from the lower classes. You meet Jack the Archer. Mm-hmm. You meet the women from the trade, you know, that was the daughter of a merchant. Mm-hmm. You compare it to Harry's mother, the religious women, you know, the whole spectrum. Yeah. She integrates the society and the male and female roles in it in a way that I thought was exemplary. Again, mm-hmm. showing the period as much more civilized than most people prefer to view it.
Sure.
Everything was not nasty, brutish, and rape because you could.
Right. Wow. I have a couple spoiler things I really want to talk about. Do you guys have any other non-spoilers?
No, I would just say for non-spoiler people, go to Amazon and do the read inside this book if this book is here, and read the prologue in the first chapter and see if you don't fall in love with it.
Yeah, you probably will. Yep. If you appreciate prose at all, you will love this. Yeah.
And a multifaceted story with some depth to it that's going to hit you in the gut hard, and it's going to stick with you. There's a reason why I remembered these books.
Yeah.
I read them in my 20s. I found the Heaven Tree probably in my 30s, early 40s. I found the omnibus, and I'm still reading it today, and it's every bit as good as the first time through.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I think like one thing that struck me just as a quick non-spoiler sell for this book is like the prose is obviously incredible, you know. Juxtaposition to that was the very grounded, earthy characters, you know. And so you kind of have this beautiful balance between the two. So you can, you know, it's a quick, I think it reads relatively quickly while still being something you want to take your time with. I don't know if that makes sense, but it really felt like even the reading experience was very balanced. Like, to me personally, I feel like this is probably one of the most criminally underrated books I've ever read, period, you know, in any genre.
For sure.
Just, it really should be up there with the greats.
Yep. I can give you a list of about 200 more.
I'm in. Anyway, I already thought about it. I'm in.
Well, if it knocks Follett's work down a peg.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, shall we give a spoiler warning? Because there's a couple things I think would be fun to discuss. Actually, do I still have this? Does this ruin our... Ooh, look at that.
Oh,
so professional. So professional. Okay.
I really need to figure this StreamYard out more.
it's called a banner. Apparently.
Oh, cool.
So, where do I want to start? I think we've kind of danced around a little bit how the antagonist was so great. And I think that's such a huge shining part of this book, that when we first meet him, Isambard, he's there and he seems like he's kind of coming in to do such a great thing, right? He's going to pay some money and help, basically hooking up Harry to come do what he really wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then things sort of unfold from there and really go off the deep end eventually. And just that slow change over the course of whatever this was, the second half of the book or whatever, was like going from, wow, you're going to help me achieve my dream, to like, oh, what, you're going to kill me. Oh, okay. Like,
insane jealousy.
Yeah.
Insane jealousy. I need the best. I got to have total commitment, all of the best. And if you deviate 1 inch, you're toast.
Yeah.
You're toast.
And you see that obsessiveness grow.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's admirable about the guy on the surface.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, when he talks about world affairs, he's usually pretty level-headed about, but when it comes to personal possession,
Yeah.
He is frightening.
He is.
Yeah. Huh.
Very much so. And go ahead.
Sorry, I just gonna say I couldn't believe how just in a couple hundred pages, 300 something pages, that gradual shift feels gradual. It doesn't feel rushed, yet it still is perfectly paced. That shift.
Yeah.
But it's all there on the first page in these nuanced little hints, like the killer dog.
Yeah.
That the woman subverts. I loved it.
Yeah, that was great.
I sent the dog home, it's like, yeah.
She was so great. Benedetta, is that right? She was so great. And seeing how, like you said, this very experienced courtesan, it's sort of this funny moment where Adam sort of wins and gets to go inside with her when they are in Paris, right? And then we just see how intertwined she gets with Harry and all the like unrequited love, and there's just.
But she can live with not getting what she wants, and that's the contrast. Yeah,
for sure. For that, I'm happy you pointed that out. That's really cool. I didn't put my finger on that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's great.
She's a woman caught between the rich and the ruling class, and she's very realistic about what she can have and she can't. But she also has her own set of steel convictions, and she lives them through.
Yeah.
No matter the cost. There's an intrepidness to these characters where they are wedded to their moral high ground, and they do not deviate, and they pay the price for it, or their moral low ground in the case of Isambard. Because watch her condemnation of him, where she said, you have just condemned yourself in your own eyes. You've sent yourself to hell. And you will see that play through. I'm not going to give away what becomes of all this as it goes through, but you think he's scary now?
Oh boy.
Okay.
She does a really good job. Like I said, the heroes and the good guys in this are so memorable, but also the bad guy is one of the best. The antagonist is one of the best antagonists I've ever seen written, and don't think it didn't influence my thinking on how to multifacet going forward. I have a list of books. I have no favorites. I just have a list of greats. This is on it.
That says a lot. Yeah. That says a lot. And even the, like, on a smaller level antagonist, like, who was the, what was his name? The, like, not farmer. In the beginning of the story, when Harry and Adam kind of sneak off to go and they put the doe out of its misery and he catches them and he thinks they killed the doe.
Oh, the Forester.
Forester. I couldn't remember his name. Yeah. But even he's stuck with me because he was just he felt so intense. But like, yet again, just doing what he feels is right. Like, he saw something, and they didn't have security cameras back then, right? So going off the evidence that he has and making the decision, letter of the law, and so like even that has stuck with me. So then even Isambard, who's a more prominent, it feels like he'll be one of these like unforgettable ones.
The rigidness of the culture, in that what the parents thought, what Father Hugh, the way he brought up those boys, but he still has to adhere to what he believes is the cultural lawful ground, even though it's not the right thing to do. The Forester, who doesn't want to cut off the hand of this 20-year-old kid who needed that hand for his craftsman family. But they all got to kind of fall in line. So the younger generation pushing the boundaries against a culture that was very, very inflexible as far as class divisions and the king's deer and where you could hunt.
Yeah.
We don't look on the culture that framed that, because where you could hunt and couldn't when you're a near starving peasant, and why the nobles were so protective of their hunting ground. And I think the one place in this book where it missed a bit, if you read other historical fiction from that era, when you reach the part in March before the first milk comes in, before the first calves are born, everybody was on the edge of starvation, because you've eaten through your winter stores. There is no more until the harvest. So the cheese, the first milk, the first cheese was a lifesaver. What game was left to reproduce was the difference between life and death. So if you didn't have rigid laws for forestry, wouldn't the poorer classes have just gone through and cleaned it out? What would have stopped the capitalistic tendency to eat everything until there's nothing left?
Right.
So I don't know whether this book covered that some of those laws may have had grounding in survival.
That makes a lot of sense.
She didn't cover the starvation that happened in March before the first grass came in, before, everything was starving. The horse, all the animals were starving. There was no fodder over the winter when you ran out of hay, or it wasn't cured properly, or the weather was bad. So that desperate feeling of the winter is over, but the harvest hasn't come in yet. And then the huge May Day celebration when people survived it, and that enormous festivals that happened, and that fecund, so there was a tiredness to the seasons. And so she kind of glances off that. That wasn't the focus for this book, but you do feel it when they encounter that game warden, that those laws were inflexible, and the punishment was absolutely inflexible.
Yeah. And like, he had the humanity, he didn't want to do it, right? But like you're saying, he sort of had to.
And Harry would not give away the couple that he helped escape.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And Adam didn't betray him.
No.
And that's one of the first, one of the many first instances where you see his moral kind of identity and kind of moral code, and then how it manifests through his artistic process later on.
Yeah. There is an inflexibility to the artist that wants to see their vision through against all comers. So without that moral backbone, could you get where you got, Nikhil?
Right. Yeah.
It's a very fine line that you tread, because you don't, if you're an honest artist and a caring artist and a compassionate artist, you don't tear down your peers to get what you want. You don't shortcut. You don't cut people off at the knees.
Yeah.
You don't break your contracts because it's more convenient. Don't say I haven't had opportunities earlier in my career to go off to greener pastures and leave a contract dangling, or not finish a promise I made, even though the publisher was not behind what I was doing. I'm talking earlier, like Cycle of Fire, around that time. There's ways that you go about things, and then there's ways that you do break a contract because they're screwing you, and you say, I will pay you back and buy it out. Not many artists have that grit to follow through. And I feel like Harry, to be the driving force behind building that church and insisting on all free labor. He had a grit that the best of us have in the creative arts. And not everyone does. Everyone sells out for something.
True.
But who are you selling out? Are you selling out to Amazon? Or are you selling out an actual person to get what you want and stepping on somebody's shoulders? See what I'm saying? So you don't get through this with clean hands completely. You got to part with some of your dearest held convictions. But I think there's an indivisible line between the ones that will sell out the system and still keep their promises, still keep their contract, or fairly break them by paying back. To the ones that will sell out the people, their peers, say bad things about people by name that they consider. We all have people that we know didn't play fair with us, but there's an ethical line, and where do you draw it?
Right.
Between your artwork and where you want to go. Where are you willing to pare away some of what is inflexibly right or wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like, Janny, to your point, I think artists have that inner moral code as well, like just all of us do. And that line, at least from, my perspective, I feel like when one crosses that line, you degrade yourself. And when you degrade yourself, the art suffers in the end anyways. And you can't reach the heights that you aspire to. You just can't.
But we've all seen people break down somewhere along the road.
More often than not.
And you can't answer for what other pressures were against them at the time.
Right.
Maybe they had a sick family member or an impossible bill they had to pay. I don't know. But it's a constant, not battle. I don't want to call it a battle but it's a constant, you have to remake the same decisions. What are you going to stick by, and what's going to last? And what will you risk if you sell down the river with people around you all the time selling down the river? One time a publisher said, we're not going to renew your contract. And the editor felt really bad about it because they knew what was going on internally, and they knew that it wasn't exactly the up and up. It wasn't a fair world. Okay.
Sure.
And when it came time that I had to submit my next manuscript, they said, oh, send us a copy, an e-copy, electronic, and I will print you out 3 hard copies that you can use for your submission. And I said, no. And she said, why ever not? You didn't get fair treatment here. And I said, because that is theft from your publisher. And I'm not going to put you in a position where you're doing that ethically, and I'm not going to accept that kind of help. I will find money to pay the Xerox guy to copy my manuscript. This was back when you did physical submissions.
Sure.
And I will find a way. I said all the dollar bills are printed the same. There's always something I can do to get a few bucks to pay a Xerox guy. I do not have to rob your company's coffers, because everybody does it doesn't mean it's right.
Sure.
So it's like, how many authors do I know who wouldn't care?
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
People who worked for corporate at that time thought nothing of taking company things and using them for their own benefit, whether it was printing their fanzines or whatever they were doing. So it's like, do you follow the crowd or do you follow your own guiding lights? Sure. And I felt like Harry was such a good example of that.
He really was. Yeah, he really was. And even that was such a strong mental image that I had. You get to that last scene with him and he walks out and like he's walking to his death, right? But he stops and he looks at that church, and like it almost makes me emotional even now just thinking about it. Like just that overwhelming emotion that he's feeling in that moment, to look at this thing that he created and just everything that went into it and everything he had to do to get there. And I'm sure there's so much, like, this is the last thing I get to make.
You see all the threads coming together.
You see all of it.
That Benedetta saved that archer from the killer dog, and Harry was involved in that moment, and it all came together in that perfect moment. And then I didn't see coming what he was going to do, the archer.
No.
But it all came back, and it was just so well done.
So well done. And it was Benedetta, right, who told him, like, make it painless and just like take him out
and
really
pick the moment when he's looking at when the light hits.
She knew he was going to do it. Yep. It's beautiful.
So yeah, she really twisted the knife in that death, but also she caught the fulfillment of a life.
Yeah.
In that moment. And I love the fact that when Edith Pargeter depicted Harry's rescuing of the child, his compassion for the lost kid that fell off his pony was what brought those two characters together. He didn't care if the kid was, and then the kid turns out to be the son of the Prince of Wales. He did not care. He did not care. He treated that child as a human being. It was his compassion, his kindness, and his sticking by his promises. So that thread of his character playing all the way through.
Yeah.
He didn't do it for the fame. He didn't do it to be rescued. He didn't do it for the fact this was a son of someone important. He did it because he cared about the kid.
Yeah. Man. And then I think about, like, now his son, who's going to grow up without the dad.
With that other boy that was
with
saved.
The other boy. And it's just like, it's heartbreaking in a way, but it's also like the legacy that his father left behind is also so beautiful that it's hard for me to be too heartbroken. I don't know. It's a weird emotion that
it's going to keep ringing through. You're going to really like, if you like the first book, you'll like the second too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
also,
if
you think Garson Bard is done with these people, you are wrong.
I want to mention one other thing too that I really loved, and that was when is it Gillies? Is that how you say her name? The little girl who driving the wagon that they hide.
Yeah, Gillies.
Gillies. That when she and Harry are like starting to get to know each other, and you can tell she's kind of flirting with him, and he's like kind of weird about it. But there's that moment, I think, is it after he paints her portrait, and they're talking, and he sort of playfully like spanks her, and she gets so humiliated and angry, and like that was the moment I was like, oh, she loves him, but it felt so real to me.
Like, she was a 10-year-old brat, but yeah,
this is how these kids act, right? It's perfect.
Yeah.
It was great. I loved that, how they did that romance. Yeah.
She's a great character. You're going to really enjoy.
Good. I'm hoping we get more of her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just can't believe how much happened in this novel. It's like each section feels very delineated too, you know? And I think that's one thing that like Edith did so well in this novel. She made each part feel like a different portion of Harry and Adam's life.
Yeah.
And so
you saw the maturity.
Yeah. And they felt distinct. So it's also, you know, I don't know if this makes sense, but with so much happening in a small page count, it also made each part feel memorable. It didn't feel like you're just setting up for this final thing. Each part mattered on the way.
Everything mattered.
Everything mattered. Yeah, that's
Yeah, well, imagine this book written in stripped-down modern style. It would have ripped everything out of it that was important.
Mm.
Yeah.
That whole sense of immersion, that whole sense of emotional connection, that whole sense of the web that surrounds these people and what they were fighting against and where they were set in the culture wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
This is what so much modern fantasy is lacking.
Yeah.
It's just paper thin. And
yeah.
And we live in such a rich culture around us. Even everyday life has so much more to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But books are kind of whittling that away to the text message.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. This, in a way, this reminds me actually quite a bit of Wars of Light and Shadow, to be honest. Obviously, it's very
people say,
different,
where did you get your vocabulary? You must use reference books all the time. No, I read books like this all the time.
Yeah.
These were the books you got in the library.
Mm.
Yeah.
They were all published hardbound. The libraries bought them. They paid more money for them because you got a library binding, which means acid-free paper and sewn binding, so they could be loaned repeatedly without breaking.
Yeah.
And if publishers are still making cheap books and selling to a library for a library copy and prices, that is wrong because there was a library binding. That is why library books lasted so long. This was the kind of book I couldn't afford paperbacks. I didn't buy comics. I didn't have enough allowance to buy comics.
Sure.
I had to read them at my friend's house occasionally. And mostly they had Archie, which I hated. Yeah, give me Batman, you know. But
there you go.
So this was the kind of fiction that I grew up with. Fantasy was very thin on the ground.
Yeah.
And what did we have when I hit fantasy finally? It was Andre Norton, it was Roger Zelazny, it was Ursula Le Guin, and it was Stephen Donaldson.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was the Ballantine Fantasy series, Mervyn Peake, Mortimer Ouroboros, R.R. Edison, Tolkien, you know, so it came from a very, very rich background.
Yeah. Well,
a richer background than I think kids get today.
Mm-hmm.
I think
you
that's
would not
probably
find
true.
this in a school library. Would you find this in your high school library?
I've never seen this anywhere. Heard a single person mention the author's name, the name of the book. Like this is not even close to being on my radar before you brought it up.
And realize that back then, for science fiction fantasy only, there were 28 publishers. 28.
Wow.
Small company imprints. It was a gentleman's business. Your contract was 3 to 6 pages.
Okay.
And they all ate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hostile mergers.
Sure.
To take over the market share and rule who could get on the shelf and who couldn't, and who had the deepest pockets to survive muscling somebody else out.
Isn't that the tale as old as time, right?
Did not collapse in a friendly way, and the independent distribution market collapsed at the same time. So we have lost the breadth of vision that so many different editors had. And back then they did not have a profit and loss meeting when they went in to buy a book. The editor said, I like this, it deserves print. Bang, make an offer. The editors had more power, and they could say, we can take a loss on the first book or second or third. You had about 4 books to establish your name, and then hopefully you keep growing. They used the mid list to grow you up into the front list. Now it's like we buy the front list for big bucks, and everybody else gets robbed of publicity and attention to feed that front list advance.
Very short-sighted.
And if I told you the advances that some of the quote famous fantasy has right now, or what they did to launch the big names that everybody's read and everybody's familiar with, it would totally transform what you perceived. There is no meritocracy here. But back then, with 28 publishers all doing pulp paperbacks, or it was a whole different world. There was much more variety and originality in what could be attempted. Not all of it would have lasted. Obviously, the imitation Tolkien went further because that's what people wanted more of, and it was bigger press runs, bigger demand. When people say, oh, modern fantasy's been first to break this ice, no, it hasn't. I can show you so many titles that played with all those concepts that are unknown because the press runs were not big enough, and they don't show up in the used market because they were keepers. They got read to death. They fell apart. And what do you get? You get the dregs of nobody wanted that book because it really was not that appealing, or it had such a giant press run there was gabillions of them, and you can always find another copy.
Well,
it's a very rich tapestry that's been flushed down the toilet.
The parallels between the publishing industry, as you describe it, and the music industry is staggering. Like 50 years ago, 5 album deals, 7 album deals, knowing that an artist would develop to the 4th one before they would make any money back.
How did a group called October Project fail? Did you ever hear their work?
I haven't heard
look up a group called October Project. Their first album is called October Project. It was 5 musicians, and they credited the lyricist, who did not ever sing or play an instrument. Their lead singer could rival Grace Slick.
Wow.
Unbelievable lead singer. Go listen to it. It's sort of a blend of Renaissance, a blend of Fleetwood Mac, and Jefferson Airplane. Put that in a blender and spit it out.
Sounds great.
You will listen to this, and I guarantee you'll love it. They did like 2 albums, and Sony buried them. Buried them. Because the independent radio stations that were in cities like Philadelphia that played the offbeat stuff like Renaissance, it all got too commercialized. But how could this group fail? They are so incredible. Everyone that I've said, go listen to them, it has blown their mind. And when you realize that when all these huge publishers were merging, the publishing offices were these little tiny cubicles where you were banging into books, manuscripts, paintings, God knows. It was like, and then you went on the music floor. And the whole place was carpeted in red, and the offices were corner and huge and had giant windows. All the money was in the music industry. And from what I can understand, the music industry, the musicians made their money on tour. The publishers took all the money from their publications. The contracts were brutal. And it's gotten worse. You know, now, what, Spotify, you get, what, 0.02 billionth of a cent for every listen? Like, you might get 25 cents for
like for 1 million listens, you know, you'll get like $3,000 or something.
It's sick. It's just sick how musicians and writers and artists and cover art has been exploited. I mean, I can tell you what I got as a lower paying cover artist to do the double page spreads for Light and Shadow. It was $4,500 for those paintings. They took a month.
Wow.
I could pay my living for a month with that salary, but I wasn't putting away a whole lot of savings. But look at now how that's been whittled down, and now here we come. We hear the people bitch that $400 is too much to pay for an original cover, and you wonder why we're being swamped with quick fix digital art and now AI. And don't tell me these digital artists who spit out these breathtaking paintings that fast are not using AI. Sorry, I don't believe it. And they use grab and stamp, because you see this tower and then you look at another painting and there's the same tower and there's the same it's the same pieces of clip art used over and over. And so that's why I'm going to be a painter until I die.
There you go. Well, the moral of the story is the good old days are good old days for a reason, right? And like, let's not let these things continue to be forgotten.
There are still good things. Booktube is one of them.
Of course.
There are some independently published books that are coming forward and becoming well known, like The Martian. It was independently published, and look what happened to it.
Wow.
And it's a fun read. It deserved to get what it gets. But I do miss the crafting that went into some of the older reads. And when you had a real editor, you had an in-house copy editor, you had an in-house proofreader, and the publisher would have died in their boots if you found one typo in a book like this.
Sure.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
That care of creating a book is gone. That sense of craftsmanship.
And you can feel it. Yeah, you can really feel it when you're reading this. Like I said this before, and I'll say it again here. Like, I cannot for the life of me figure out how this wound up in the forgotten closet. Like this was awesome. And I hope that we've been talking for like an hour, right? Like, I hope this has gotten across at least some of just how deep and complicated and nuanced, but still so, it's just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's inevitable, right? It's everything. It's so,
it's rich.
Fantastic.
It's rich in ideas. It's rich in human nature. It's rich in history. It's rich in inventiveness and how the plot was developed. To me, it's satisfied on every level. And I have a pretty high bar for my list of eternal favorites. This book is on it.
There you go.
And it's beautiful because it's rich in all these things, but never overwhelming.
Never.
You can fall into it very easily.
Yeah, it's very easy to follow. You're never going to be lost. You're never going to be confused. But and there's so much tension the whole way through with no battle scenes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one's very small one, right? But like, I don't know. It's just, this honestly blew my mind how good it was. And so excited to read book 2 with you guys. And we're going to have to do another discussion after book 2. At least I would like to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then see if we can collect some people. We'll put the guys who read Pillars of the Earth on that side and people who read The Heaven Tree on the other side.
Fun, there we go.
I read them both, and we'll have at it. I love a Ken Follett book. Don't get me wrong. Eye of the Needle and some of his other work is brilliant, but Pillars of the Earth, after having read this, because see, I came to Pillars of the Earth after having read this.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe if I'd flipped it around. Nah, I don't think so.
Well, that sounds like that could be a fun discussion.
Read some fantasy by Judith Tarr. She's a PhD historian. She's done fantasy of King John's England. She's done fantasy in the Crusades. She's blended the Legend of Roland.
Cool.
She did a little standalone called Ars Magica where a medieval monk has magic.
Okay. Sounds cool.
She's a PhD historian. Why isn't her work in the fantasy field recognized? And she's just been deep sixed for no reason I can see.
Yeah. What was the name again?
Judith Tarr, Tarr.
Judith Tarr. That sounds.
Read her Hound and Falcon, Something in the Cross. It's a Crusades fantasy. Or read her King John, King Richard, where King John has the magic and he's holding England's magic, and King Richard is the flaming asshole, and it's in some ways more accurate to history.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, she wrote a King John, King Richard historical, and she's done some Egyptian historicals and some Eastern historicals. And she's quite a gifted writer. She writes as beautifully as Guy Kay in many ways.
Okay.
Both of them are somewhat deaf. So you get a different kind of perspective to their prose. And she's still writing, but you haven't ever heard of her.
No.
Gotta check her out.
Yeah. Another one for the list. There we go. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on The Heaven Tree? I know we've hit a bunch of stuff here today, but you have any last minute sales pitch? Anything you got to get off?
If you like Guy Kay, go read this book.
I would say if you like Words, Light, and Shadow, read this.
Influences came from these kinds of books. I have read some of the books that were his influences, and I can see it writ large on the page.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever read this particular one, but his prose style did not come out of the blue. It came from a grounding in myth, in legend, in older works and wider works that were written in parallel of fantasy, a lot of historical and a lot of and the setting. He'll often go and stay in a place and then write the book while he's staying there. And so a lot of his grounding in his settings comes from actually being in those places. So
that's really cool. Oh, I'm so excited to read him.
And if you read, say, Guy Kay's Fiona of Our Tapestry, the gift in that book is not that it's a copy of Tolkien, it's that it borrowed from everything Tolkien borrowed from. All of the big legendary material that all of a lot of fantasy was drawn from, he called it the Fiona of Our Tapestry because he mixed them all together. in this one book. And in order to appreciate that, I almost feel you have to be wider read, because people dismiss what he's done as a copy, and it's not. He went to the antecedents.
That's funny. So
and if you know where he's drawing from, it's freaking brilliant.
Yeah, the joke's on all of them. They think they're smarter than GGK, but they actually don't get it.
He's 2 steps ahead of them. Yeah.
Playing 4D chess.
So yeah, if you enjoyed Guy K, this one isn't as sentimental or nostalgic. How do I want to put it? He has a way of writing about a character and what their past was like, and he puts it in terms, he frames it in a way that they're looking back on what they did and what they missed and what cut the deepest and what they lost. He has a way of setting. This book doesn't quite look at its story with that perspective, but as far as the richness of the setting, the period, the prose, the intensity of the characters, the intensity of the conflicts. If you like Guy K, I can't imagine you wouldn't like this book.
I love it. Nikhil, you have any final thoughts? Take us home.
Yeah, no, I think preaching to the choir really at this point. I think kind of like I mentioned before, is there is a ton to unpack, but it never feels like a chore to do so. You're just moving through the story, and as you're kind of taking a look around you in this world, you're seeing all this nuance, and you can kind of dive deeper into it, and it's very thought-provoking, but it never makes you, it only adds to the reading experience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Be a maverick reader. Don't tread the same old path. Don't go read this book or that book because everybody else is. Get off the beaten track occasionally.
This has kind of made me think more about like what more I've been missing out there. Like the stuff that I've the other 200 that Janny mentioned. So.
Well, we got some time to try to get through some of them anyway, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully a long life ahead of us. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today.
And thanks for giving this book a chance.
Man, this was so great. This was so great.
There they are. The older brother and the
there
baby.
They are. Got the cats. This was awesome. I hope everybody who's watching this, like, please, I mean, if you're watching this far, you're at least okay with spoilers unless you've read it. But if go spread the word about this. Let's get more people reading this. It's just fantastic. And hopefully we've made a strong case for that here today. I'll make sure that Nikhil's channel is tagged in the description here. I'll have Janny's website in the description as well, so you can go check out all of her work if you're somehow not on the Janny train yet.
Add your tags for your own presentation on the series. Put that in there too.
Yeah, we should do that. I'll do that too.
You guys, both of you have done some of the best takes on the series that are out there. So please add that, because that'll help you and help me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We love talking about the Wars of Light and Shadow. That's for sure. And so we'll I'll link those down in there as well. Yeah. Many more to come. That's for sure. All right. Thanks everybody so much for watching, and I guess we'll see you in the next video.